Well, hello, everybody. Good evening and happy Tuesday? It's Tuesday now, right? I'm not mistaken. Hello, Mr. MacRath. Welcome in. Glad to have you here with us. And hello to everyone else, wherever you happen to be. We are here again tonight for Tellafrog. Why is he named Tellafrog? Well, guess what? We're not going to find out in this book. Did you know you're going to have to go and get yourself the next book, I think, or maybe even the book after that, if you want to find out why the surname of Raileanu is Tellafrog? You're just going to have to do that thing. You're going to have to go out and support the author. I mean, what a horrible idea, right? Having to support an author? No! Well, I'm glad to have you here with me tonight as we will continue our reading of Tellafrog, starting in Chapter 9. Yeah. If you have missed any of the previous chapters, they are all available on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, or on my Rumble channel, rumble.com/SirArminius. I'm actually not 100% certain what my web address is on Rumble, but I guarantee if you search Tellafrog over there, it's gonna be the only things. So if you have missed them, make sure you get out there and give them a listen. If you have not done so already, get out there and give some love to our author. You can check him out on Tellafrog.com. You can also go and find more information or pick up his book on Amazon.com. If you happen to be the most beautiful girl in the world. Distracted. If you happen to be a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can go and get the book and page along with me. You know, the author gets paid for how many pages are paged along in their book. Don't you want to help the author get paid for the hard work that goes into this? I will tell you, as a audiobook narrator who is dabbling my toes in the waters of writing, I'm writing a book because why not? I don't have enough other things going on, right? So as an author as a narrator who is also doing that, I'm learning a lot about how it goes into doing the other side of this, not just reading the words, but writing the words. It's a little bit harder than you would think. There's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of, time and effort to put the words down on the page, to go back and do all of the editing, to make everything right, to make it evocative, and really to keep people engaged in what you're doing. A lot of work to it. So, while it seems like it's easy, remember, oftentimes these books are the price of a cup of coffee. To get it on ebook, maybe a Starbucks coffee to get the actual physical book. So you can go out there and one less coffee, 2 less coffees for the month. Support an indie author. And hey, help them to do what they do. There is a lot of time and effort that goes into these things that you would never realize until you start to do it. From our author, I've learned a great deal just from listening to you. The other authors on X are so helpful. I do not disagree with that. I've been chatting back and forth with another author on there who's a much more established author who has been helping me to kind of get some ideas together for my book cover. He helped me rewrite. Well, he gave me some feedback on my first page and I went through and rewrote my first page of my novel. I'm not done writing the novel yet. I went and rewrote the first page, and I think it's much better now. The right people on there are absolutely fantastic. The wrong people just suck away all of your energy. Anyway, we are back tonight with Tellafrog. In our last reading, our protagonist, our hero, Raileanu Tellafrog, went to the local missionary to check in on the priest there who had been ministering to the prisoners at his parents' wizard prison that they were the wardens for. And on the way there, they unfortunately ran across a homestead where one of the people on the homestead had passed away. And then they went to the mission. They found out that things were not going well for the people at the mission. Pretty much everybody else had been killed. The head priest had been attacked, and just not good situation for him. They helped him out, got him kind of back up and going, helped him to do the things that needed to be done. Went back to the homestead, helped to bury the people at that homestead. And now Raileanu and Artyrus are getting back to where his mother lives, where his father passed away. And that's where we will be kicking off our reading tonight, starting in chapter 9. I expect to get through at least chapter 9 and 10. Hey, depending on how long the chapters are, we may even get into 11. Either way, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy. If you happen to be in a warm place, get yourself a cold drink. If you happen to be in a cold place, get yourself a hot drink. Put your feet up, relax, put on a blanket if you want to, and let's dive into another fantastic reading tonight. As always, I do record these, so if you ask me questions during it, unfortunately I cannot answer. I'm reading to you, and I'm recording it. But the author is available on the YouTube channel that you can connect with and say hello. Or I will be happy to engage and answer questions and things like that in between chapters. And now, let's get ourselves started, right? With, I'm sorry, there is one last thing I need to fix. I had a charity stream this last week, and because of that, I changed where my recording was going. And as I was getting ready to push the button that said record, I remembered I need to put it back to where it's supposed to be. It's just the way life's meant to be. So here we go with Chapter 9. We put the horses in the stalls, filled their water buckets and hay bins for the night. Mama was inside cooking, and we went on towards the house, knocking all the dust and dry grass fibers from our boots and clothes as we got into the porch. I'm going to try not to trouble Mama with all we discovered until tomorrow, if that's all right. Maybe wait until she heads to bed before you speak with the professor, I said, as hushed as I could. Yes, agreed, he whispered, as Mama came to us at the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. I have dinner ready, boys. She came and hugged us as we came in and sat down at the table, already set. Old Catherine the Great flew in and sat atop a high-backed chair near the fireplace. How was Father Callias? She asked busily, wanding food onto the plates and serving bowls. We looked at each other, and I said, He is doing all right. A bit under the weather is all. Hoping it would satisfy for now, not wanting to spoil her good mood. That's good. I hope he gets better. Here we are. She levitated everything to its place on the table and came and sat down by me. Give us a blessing for the meal, son. All right. Lord bless us and this food. Thank you for all your kindness and for holding us up when we need it. Please find the hearts of all those who need peace and bring your justice to those who are lawless. Amen. All right, everyone, dig in. It's steak and baked potato, with collard greens and hominy. Oh, and I have a nice chocolate pudding for dessert. She smiled and began to work on her steak. We didn't bring it up at dinner or afterward. We were genuinely a bit worn out and emotionally drained. Mama knew we hadn't said everything, but trusted us to do so when it made sense. Besides, I was very relieved to see her in such high spirits. I didn't expect her to mope around and be in doldrums about father. We knew where he was. I was quite glad she hadn't let a hint of grief sneak in. The good meal helped, and after dark, once the animals were taken care of, we retired to bed. Tonight, I thought, I am going to actually use that hot water bath. And I did. I don't remember the last time I slept so well. I was clean, sore, and physically and emotionally exhausted. Monica had spent the last few days diligently working through the plants, rocks, minerals, drawings, notes, and samples I had collected, but was growing tired of being confined to the royal house. She hadn't been back across the street to the pub or hotel since her meeting with Runetta. Tonight, though, she thought, she would at least walk the few hundred yards of rampart surrounding the high walls of the courtyard, as the nights were already cooling a bit, and autumn would begin here soon. When she had put all the collections away and locked them up in the old barracks, she walked to the dining hall, about 50 feet long and 20 wide, made for a time when far more soldiers were garrisoned in these smaller royal residences. They had prepared turkey and some Black Sea fish tonight, along with cabbage and mushrooms. She had some fish and cheese, along with a glass of red wine, because the cask they had opened recently was very good. Afterwards, she walked to the front of the yard and entered one of the guardhouses, which had a spiral stone staircase leading up to the ramparts. It was dark now, and she walked all the way to the perimeter wall on the west, where it met the taller and separate city wall. Then she went back towards the front gate, where there was a bench, which she sat on for some time. By now, the street lamps had been lit for 2 hours, and most foot traffic outside had come to an end. She could see that the 4-story buildings and homes within sight had most of their lights out, the residents asleep. She let out a polite yawn, barely audible to even herself, and leaned her head back to look at the stars. "Oh, darling Monica, you need some rest." Monica's blood went cold and almost stopped as she heard a voice. How could anyone have heard a tiny yawn? How could anyone have known it was me? Runetta. She obviously knew Monica was there, so she stood and took a look over the rampart wall. Click, click, click. Runetta's form was moving a few steps closer to the street, and she stopped. Was it her? Surely the size and outline indicated it was. The lady brought something to her face and struck a match. She lit a small cigar, or something like it. The light of the match and the slow draw on it did indeed show her face. It was Runetta. She looked right at Monica, who by now could tell it was some expensive clove tobacco cigarello by the aroma. Monica stood quietly defiant, saying nothing. Why was this woman here again? Runetta took another draw on her tobacco and then turned and walked back around the corner of the pub with her high boots clicking as if they had metal plates on the heels, snapping on the stone cobbles as she walked. She must have dislocated in the darkness because the sound of her boots stopped. That was enough of this. Monica went straight down to the guards and asked them to inform her if they caught that woman loitering around again. She went inside to the great room where the professor's portrait was, but alas, he wasn't available. Well, in that case, I will just spend the night here and speak with him as soon as possible. She fetched a serving tray with cream and sugar, a small pot of coffee, and a cup. She retrieved some paper and made essentially a sign which read, "Wake me when Professor Templeton is available." She placed it so that if the butler and the professor himself, who happened to pass into view, would not miss it. She grabbed a light blanket, a footstool, and positioned herself about 6 feet from the portrait. She didn't finish her small pot of coffee before it went cold, and she fell asleep. It was daylight, and the light touch of the butler woke her the next morning. He had seen her note, passed word along through the night shift, and the morning man was here, alerting her that the professor was indeed waiting. She shook herself more awake, thanked the butler with a light touch on his hand with hers, and stood, blanket still around her shoulders. "Professor, I apologize for being asleep. I hope I didn't keep you waiting," she began, still rubbing her eyes clear of Krusty's. No, 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 my dear. I have been here but a few moments. How are you?" he said, whilst pouring himself a morning cup of tea. "I am fine. Is there anything you know further about this lady, Runetta Lynchos? She was here again last night, right outside the gate, more or less toying with me," Monica stated firmly. "I'm afraid nothing more. However, I believe Clement has also been looking into it, and he should be arriving this evening with you. He has a meeting with someone on an unrelated matter, but I believe he mentioned this person may have helpful knowledge about her nonetheless. Please do not speak with her again until we know more about her intentions. When Clement arrives, it may be prudent for you to return to Vienna with him, if he is also concerned," the professor said. "I won't speak with her again. I think it may be better to finish this work in Vienna as well, although I will be away from Raileanu's source materials if I need additional samples or drawings from this area. I'm sure he will understand so," Monica said. "Yes, he will care more about your peace of mind than your access to nearby plant life while working on his texts. You are right. Please do not worry any more. It is time to pack up those things and move your studies to the safety of the Metternich family home in Vienna. I'm sure the staff can help if you require it." No, I have it well organized. I can manage. I want to ensure that everything is delivered intact and with the best possible reduction in the risk of damage. Thank you, Professor. Please let me know if anything else changes with Raileanu." "I will, of course. Goodbye for now." She finished, laid the blanket on the chair, and went to eat some breakfast. There's a lot of packing to do, she thought. It was a bit comforting to know she'd most likely be gone by nightfall. Hopefully. The next morning, back in Texas, I rose as dawn broke and headed down for breakfast, where Mother and Artyrus were already nearly finished eating. "A nice hot bath does help you relax and sleep better, doesn't it, dear?" Mom said, already preparing a plate for me. My affinity for shredded potatoes with a fried egg and about a dozen pieces of thick, crispy bacon hasn't eluded her memory, and it was almost ready. Living in the ordinary world, I had learned to enjoy the simple making of my own food, precisely the way I liked it. But honestly, having someone who could produce it exactly right was, well, special. And so delicious. No denying that fact. "Have you begun decorating the new arboretum? Do you have any requests from overseas I might offer?" I asked after a few satisfying mouthfuls. "I did some yesterday. Yes, I decided to ring the interior of the opening and down the walls with moonvine, which should illuminate the interior at night. I also changed the upper fixed glass panels to hinged panels that I can open. This way, lightning bugs and other night critters can come in and enjoy pollinating at will," she said, proud of those brilliant changes. "Outstanding, Mama. I'd considered none of those things myself." Pausing now for more of my favorite breakfast. "So, boys, are you going to tell me about Father Callias and what is going on at the mission, or are you going to leave me guessing the worst?" She stopped and stared at me. "I promise, Mama, the father is fine, but he is not feeling well enough to travel right now. He was very upset about Dad's passing, and very grateful for the sourdough you made him," I hoped to assure her. "I am honestly not ready to talk about the other unrelated things that occurred on that trip, Mama. Please." She reached over the table and put her hand on my wrist. "It's really okay. I don't want you sparing me anything I could help with. I understand, and some things don't help anyone to keep in or let out." After breakfast, we attended to the tasks that had been left undone at the place while Dad was sick. I weeded the back garden again and watered it for her. Arteris restocked, magically of course, the hay and grain supplies for the horses, and took Mama and Papa's horses out for a run, as they hadn't been out for several weeks, other than a canter up and around the perimeter. He cleaned their hooves, checked their shoes, restocked the coal bin, and soaped all their saddles, bridles, and leads. He made sure the cans of lamp oil were full and even crawled around on the roof of the stable to make sure that it wasn't in need of repair. He asked Mother about firewood for fall and winter, and she informed him that Father only allowed deadfall and storm damage from the wood surrounding our little enclave to be used for firewood. So he went up and found several large branches of live oak and water oak that had fallen, along with a whole foot diameter branch of broken, likely in an earlier spring storm, which was rich pine. Rich pine variety has a rich red streak of essentially natural kerosene in it. They burn vigorously and easily, so we decided to let him splinter the whole thing into kindling. It was an uneventful morning, but productive. When we finally stopped at midday, I remembered the stick we had found at Digger's family's dugout and asked Arteris to fetch it so we could look at it with the monocle still in his room. When he came back out of the house with it, in direct sun, what had looked almost like tar in the shade of the dugout and trees, in reality had no sheen to it in any angle or light. It was a flat color, almost like a wooden version of cast iron. He took a few minutes and said he perceived no sign of a troublesome magical quality. He let Mother examine it also, who made no discoveries either. She went into the house for a moment and came out with a pitcher of lemonade and glasses. "I am not convinced that's a natural stick, however. It doesn't look artificial either. Boys, it may only be a weird stick she found and fancied so she could make a fly swatter out of it," she said as she poured the drinks for us. "Hang on to it. Long enough to show it to the professors this evening is my advice." "Good idea, Mama. We will do that," I said as we relaxed on the front porch in the shade. "How about showing me around in your new work when we're done here?" "Yes, I do believe it's best before the hottest part of the day. I may even open the center up a bit to the water table while we are down there to keep humidity up and moderate the temperature a bit. The well water is a very comfortable 50 degrees around here. It should help," she said. "Did you ever get a chance to look at the cell gate from below while we were gone yesterday?" "No, I wasn't sure if you boys took the monocle with you, so I didn't bother," she said. "I did save the old main door in case they want it at another prison. I moved it out back under the porch roof." Arteris splayed his fingers out and upturned his wrists, I guess indicating he had left it out, but maybe he forgot to tell her why. "Arteris, would you mind terribly?" I looked at him, feet propped on the rail, and leaned back in the rocking chair. "No, I suppose it is a good idea before we forget. Plus, if there is nothing interesting, you," leaning his glass of lemonade towards Mama, "can use them as railing or gates or something in the arboretum." "Exactly the plan, sir," Mama said back to him. We finished our cool drinks and headed out. I went to and held the door for Mama, allowing her to enter her glass dome for my first look. The section she added for the honeysuckle and similar plants was about 10 feet tall, domed to match the main cap dome, and of the same total height and construction. 2-foot-tall windings of them, and some orange trumpet vine, were already springing up. She had arranged the center spire of solid rock into a low handrail wall that snaked down the inside of the stairs, about a foot wide and 3 feet high. That was good. I didn't need her falling into a 100-foot pit. The cells, which had been carved from solid rock, had rectangular indentations. Not very impressive. She had arched the ceilings of and put niches all the way around each one. Each of those had a bowl-shaped basin full of dirt waiting for her selections. The cut of the glass on the dome allowed ample light to reflect down into the spaces better than I had imagined, both in summer and winter. I glanced up and marveled at what wasn't visible from ground level outside. The center of the glass roof was essentially a gigantic Fresnel lens. Some of the rooms at the top quarter had long wooden tables in their centers, with pots and baskets of rich soil waiting to be filled with plants. When we were about half of the way down, she drew her wand and waved it at the west side, and moonvine was transplanted actually from wherever she had already had some, because it was about 6 feet long. That plant will remain dull, dark green in the light of day, and at night it will emit a pale blue light as it processes nutrients from the soil. We continued down to the bottom, which was a 25-foot diameter circle of flat stone. We stayed at the bottom of the stairs, where she waved her wand again in a tight little circle, and the stone, 10 feet from the very center, resorted itself into a fish-shaped fountain, pointing up, with water all around it. The fish let loose a 100-foot column of water about a foot wide, going all the way up to the ground surface, before falling against its own sides and back into the pool around the fish statue. That instantly caused cool air to circulate in the whole of Wormwell, and also carried light from the sun, or, I suppose, the moon, all the way to the bottom. Magic or not, my mama has a great imagination. Artyrus called down from the rim at the top. "The gates don't have anything of interest. If you need them, they are clear." "Okay, thanks," I hollered back up. "Ready?" Mom asked, already holding up her wand. "Yeah, sure." I stood back against the wall, smiling. She raised it high and brought each of the 21 gates down to us, collecting them into a ball of swirling white-hot iron. One by one, dozens of small and large balls of molten iron fell away and formed into small frogs, falling to the floor in front of us. They began leaping to the edges of the pool, making charming poses and groups, and some were even horny toads. Several large toads then assembled themselves into bench ends, holding iron bars woven into lattice seats that crossed between the toads, bending up at the back to form beautiful seating areas. There were 6 evenly spaced large toads, looking upward with their mouths open, and a small series of holes appeared on their necks. Another swish, and large drops of water, randomly timed, began falling into their mouths from the great pillar of water, making little creeps and rivets as the water drained out through the holes. Genuinely beautiful. What an imagination! We stayed at the bottom in the cool air until evening, talking about all our time here with Daddy, telling her about all the things I had found in my time in Austria on my last visit. It occurred to me that she was likely in a good enough mood, and that it was safe to show her the locket and tell her about how I was feeling recently about Monica. I handed the locket to her, and while she had seen her through a portrait and suspected our fondness for each other, she was brought to tears of happiness as I explained. "Look, honey." Mom held the locket open back at me. "She is looking right at me. She had to have been looking at your painting." "Oh, she says she is. She says she misses you." Oh, I am so happy." She looked at me and hugged my neck hard. "That's from her. Oh, she says to make sure and have Artyrus talk with the professors this evening." "Tell her I will. Tell her I miss her, too," I said, smiling. "May I stay here and speak with her for a while, son?" she asked, with her fingertips together over her mouth, smiling. Yeah, all right, Mama," I said, smiling, and I started back up. I guess at 35 years old, she had waited long enough for me to consider a possible courtship. Additionally, it actually ached a little knowing I could not speak with her or see her form a smile. I went all the way back up to the top and out the door into the front yard and caught a whiff of distant rain. A cold rain from the north. I walked up to the rim and yelled down to Mama that rain was coming. She stood and started up the stairs, still talking through a wide smile to Monica, so I went back out in the yard. Now I could also detect a distinct whine sound in the distance. I looked to the west, where the wind was whipping up grass and dust in the air, and the dark gray cloud bank towered as high as I could see. The mid to bottom levels were still obscured, but the wine only comes from one thing: a tornado. The wall of clouds stretched from north to south as far as was visible. It was a massive storm. "Mama, I can hear a tornado somewhere in that storm. Please come up. Artyrus, where are you? A tornado is coming!" I shouted down to Mama, then around to wherever Artyrus might be. "It's okay," Mama shouted, about halfway up now. "Calm down. This place has weathered a dozen of them in our years here. We are well protected." "All right. This place is fine." Lord, that is a relief. But everywhere else? Every other time in my life? That is a terrifying prospect, and painful for me because I can perceive them long before any other person, and I have failed to convince some in the past. No, I think I will hold on to my fear and apprehension regarding this terrifying force of the natural world. "What?" Artyrus came from inside the house, looking confused. "What is happening?" "A thunderstorm, of which I can feel the thunder approaching now. One that has a tornado hidden in it somewhere. I can hear it." "What is that? A tornado?" he asked, still confused. Mama had finally come up and out the front. "Not to worry, boys. This place is quite well protected. Has been for decades." Regardless of my mother's lack of fear, I relayed mine to Artyrus. "It is the single most powerful storm that forms unpredictably on the face of the earth. Its powerful winds rip the strongest trees to shreds, obliterates any man-made structure in its path, and can even rip the sod from the earth in severe cases," I laid out, still nervous. "Not for us, but for every living thing in its path." "Really? These are coming here?" he queried, looking now nervously at the sky. "More common than most think, I'm afraid." Mama had made her way to the front porch from inside the house by now, and was setting the rocking chairs up to face outwards, and pouring lemonade, almost comically calm with her little grin. Now the clouds at the front did indeed begin to boil, rolling like millions of huge balls in the sky, thick, black, swirling shells with an eerie green glow inside them. That was a sign I had seen in every tornado in north, central, and eastern Texas I had ever encountered. I pointed the feature out to Artyrus, explaining it was a sign to find shelter no matter what anyone else might think, if caught out in the open. We walked to the house and sat down with her, each holding a glass of ice-cold drink, dripping with condensation, as we watched the clouds swirl and lumber closer and closer. Mama took her wand and did a little circle wave up in the air. "What was that for?" I asked. "Your father and I were, after much practice, mind you, able to modify the protection spells so that we let just enough rain and wind in from storms, while keeping everything else out. You will enjoy this. Previously, it allowed the wind and rain to continue uninterrupted, and things would become terribly muddy. Now it is gentle and just enough that it gets through. The rest runs off to the perimeter of the property and seeps into our water table." She kept rocking back and forth peacefully. "Mother, I am glad you and Dad were safe all these years. I know you have heard what happens to ordinary people and animals who experience a tornado. It is heartbreaking," I said, as heavy raindrops, about the size of glass marbles, began striking the layer overhead, each making a bluish glowing outline. Only a small drop of much lower velocity came through and fell to the ground. Each one made a donk sound, which was very faint, even for me. Thousands began to fall, and the noise grew to the point where it was all-consuming. The light show it produced as they danced around plonking on the magical shell was beautiful, I have to admit. However, then the hail started, and even through the light admitted and the sound and the heavy blowing sheets of rain combined, we could see tree branches and so much long dead grass from the prairie outside the wood we were in. I knew one of the deadly twisters was nearby. Larger pieces of trees had been ripped from their trunks and began crossing our view, seemingly opposite the direction the sheets of rain moved. A few struck the shell, creating a rippling wave of blue light, but no more than a gentle breeze, and steady small drips evenly coated the ground and in little streams from the roof edges. Then huge chunks of ice hail struck with tremendous force, some as large as my fist, dozens and built to hundreds. At the edges of our yard, to the west, the pea-sized hail and these larger balls collected and sat pinned between the arc of our dome and the walls of rock pillars that surrounded our place. A whining sound grew, almost deafening, seeming to come from all directions. That is the sound of a tornado. It comes from the debris combined with the compression of winds moving more rapidly than anything else on Earth, aside from volcanoes, I said, pointing to the sky. Lightning in the leading edges began striking the ground ahead of the storm with far greater frequency, accompanied by huge, thunderous cracks, followed by its remnants rumbling and rolling towards us. "How big are they?" Arcturus asked. "There can be many more than one. Sometimes they split from a large one into many smaller ones. They can move across lakes, and they can hide inside heavy rain, so we can't spot them. Sometimes they come with no rain. Sometimes one will destroy every blade of grass, every cow, and every tree, but then lift and pass right over a house or barn. Some are as wide as you can view in either direction. Some leave a trail 5 feet wide. They are genuinely terrifying forces," I laid out in a monotone voice, scanning the sky above. The blinding white of lightning increased, making everything appear monochrome, and the cracks of sound they made were virtually unbearable. The whirring and whine of the winds in the twister was so intense now, Mama gave the air a tap with her wand and made it practically silent. Thank goodness. Suddenly and sadly, we watched as several squirrels, impaled with 1,000 shards of splintered wood, slid across the dome, as did a jackrabbit, broken and twisted in unnatural ways. The bright flashes made it even more macabre. Several dozen mockingbirds, blue jays, crows, and grackles also had misfortune. The blurred edge of the funnel then leaped across the eastern edge of the protective shell, moving so fast that it was impossible to watch as rain, ice, or debris fell from it. The power of the funnel began to force lightning itself to wind round it. Its edge continued to lift up and across and stayed for a moment, long enough for us to even glimpse blue sky at the end of the funnel. Arcturus's mouth was wide open now, staring essentially through a hole in the worst storm he had ever seen. For that brief moment, the edge of the center was near us. Then it vanished, heading off in what direction was not clear, thankfully not over us. A moment later, on the backside of the event, where winds were less powerful, more and more debris and small animals clunked into the layer above us, each one in its time being blown to one edge or the other, where all the hail had gone. Now only thick blankets of rain fell mixed with leaves and pine needles, washing off above us in waves. A few minutes later it was nothing more than a drizzle, and a few minutes more after that the sky began to clear to the west, until finally the setting sun emerged from behind the towering monster of a storm. I was still able to pick up the rumbling of thunder as it rode further away from us. The speed with which something so large could move across the land was fascinating. "That is the most amazing and terrifying thing I have ever seen," Arcturus said, swallowing dryly. "I do not know of any magic producing that kind of power. It was truly awesome." There is no magic which can equal the power of God's creation, dear boy. None at all, Mother said without looking up. I believe you. Certainly not, Artera said, now surveying the carnage of trees and hapless fauna strewn about the perimeters. Only then did Bandos finally appear, having been in the house, likely under the table. Mother gave a wave of her wand, and we heard all the debris falling around us, in and around the maze of stones. Bandos lit off in a hurry, wanting to smell check every critter that was around and explore all the things that had blown in from afar. Mother, what about Father Callios? It occurred to me that he might be in serious danger from something that strong. His mission is pretty well built. If he is indoors or underneath in his basement, he should be fine, she responded with confidence. I looked at Artyrus, who was already looking back at me, knowing he was diminished and alone. We had to check on him. How fast do you think that storm is going, Mama? Do you think it will be over Father Callius in less than an hour? It seemed pretty quick to me, from when I first detected it to when it began destroying things here, I asked her. Oh, yes, probably under an hour. She stopped and looked at me concerned. You aren't going, my boy. It's only a couple hours until dark. You'll never make it back before dark. No, but Artyrus can dislocate, only long enough to determine if the father is all right, but not be seen, I said, looking at him then. If you are all right with doing so. Well, I think I will wait the time needed to make sure I don't show up right in the middle of that beast. Barring that, I don't mind, he said wisely. I think he should check, Mama. It's possible some travelers, or a family who took shelter at the mission may need help, I said to her. Okay, that may be true, she conceded. But you, little frog, are not going. We all agreed, and I went to retrieve the boxes of my extra ball and powder to give him, and spent a few minutes making sure he knew the hazards of even letting locals see his wand, or his interactions with his owl. Many of the tribes in the New Republic of Texas fear owls, and go right past not trusting anyone who consorts with them to seeing it as a sign they are evil. I made him a sling out of rope for the rifle, so he could easily take that with him. Artyrus took one look at the crude rope, recognized its usefulness, but shook his head no. He took his wand, waved it at the length of the sling, and it changed to a beautifully tooled leather sling. He smiled and gave me a nod. I agreed it was much better, and he lifted the rifle up and rested it across his back, his left arm outstretched through the sling. We agreed it was probably a good idea for him to first go to that spot where we had turned off to the Loggins homestead and determine where the storm was before going all the way to the mission. I also made him take Cat, in case of a problem, again, reminding him not to have her with him. She had returned and rested last night. When he was set, with his wand secured inside his vest, he shut his eyes and dislocated. All I could do was pray and hope for the best, for both him and Father Callius. I went back inside and helped Mother prepare dinner. She had decided enough with the easy way. She was ready to cook properly for her guests. When Artyrus returned, she would have an authentic homegrown meal for him. So she set me to collecting vegetables out back. All right, everyone, that is Chapter 9. We will move on to Chapter 10 here momentarily. I hope you are enjoying this so far. Ah, the tornado. A good description of the tornado, by the way. That would freak me the heck out. Of course, I don't have magic to help me visit, right? But hey, what are you going to do? Just because I'm not magical doesn't mean I want to be anywhere near a storm of tornadic capability. Oof. Been through two. I mean, You hear the descriptions and you assume that it's probably something that you have been through, especially living where you live. Which, yeah, I've been through most forms of weather, I think, at this point. That's one I have not. Ah, just, I mean, yeah, force of nature is to say the very least about that, right? Those are absolute forces of nature. I will say, one good thing about living in New England. We have tornadoes here, but they're fairly rare, and I don't think we ever get above a Cat 1 tornado here. It's just not conducive to it around in this area, but we do have them hit periodically. Nothing like Tornado Alley. My daughter wanted to be a storm chaser when she was younger. She no longer wants to be a storm chaser. But hey. All right, everyone. Let me check really quick, make sure I don't see any questions from anybody across the various streams here. Nope, I don't see them. I don't see them. Alrighty then. Excuse me. In that case, we return to Tellafrog. Chapter 10. Late in the evening, 2 hours after nightfall, Clement and his family arrived at the residence. By this time, Monica had packed everything and relabeled the crates according to her inventory and the additional work she had done. She had eaten and checked the portraits several times to see if there was any news about Raileanu, Runetta, or, indeed, anything at all, to no avail. She had retired to the same chair she had waited in before and fallen asleep. Clement woke her and sat across from her in another chair. I must apologize for our late arrival. The meeting I had earlier in the day took longer than I would have liked on official business, and then we began discussing your friend. You mean Runetta? He knows of her? Monica sat upright from her slouched position, waking as swiftly as she could to converse intelligently. Yes, she did. Yes, he did. She, like most aristocrats of her stature, wandered from one formal occasion to the next, living lavishly and fomenting discord in her wake. Her companions at each event seemed to differ, each as polished and reviled as the next. Her family fortune, being built on the largest stand of ancient one-quality timber in the world, affords whatever distractions pop into her pretty little head, honestly. Monica scowled at this, affirming her guess at the kind of woman she was. Many of her family stay in these circles, but it is reported she had spent many a summer with an uncle, the brother of her mother, who illegally trained her in black magic even before she began school. This man, Adolphus Tangleweed, never married, but fathered children with several witches who spent time in prisons across the world after they gave birth, each one more driven towards madness than the last. He paused long enough to pour himself and Monica a cup of coffee that the butler had brought on a tray. Handing her the cup, he continued, It is rumored by some that he is possibly her father. He has been a hermit in one of the many small castle ruins that litter their family holdings, and has not been seen in something like 20 years. He is technically still under an arrest warrant in Bulgaria, having killed a woman who rejected his advances in full view of assembled revelers on New Year's Eve, 1818. She is not known for her criminality, nor is she wanted anywhere, but no one can recall her being a positive influence at any gathering. I'm afraid we don't know much more than that. None of this explains why she has such an interest in me, Monica said firmly. I refuse to cower to her, or anyone. I request to stay with you in Vienna to complete my work on Raileanu's collections on this year, and if possible, to have someone in authority alert one of us if she is in our proximity again. I understand. I can have you stay at our townhouse in Vienna, which will have my private security, not royal guards. I'd rather not encroach on my employment with the royal family in these matters, and it's much safer there. My people can be informed and a lot of such things, and I feel they will do a fine job in this, Clement stated. Have you spoken with Professor Templeton recently? She asked. I have, earlier today. She told me about Raileanu and Arcturus's trip to a nearby Spanish mission, which has suffered recent calamity at the hands of some roving bandits. Everyone was all right. Clement held his hand up, signaling they were fine. Yes, I did speak to Raileanu's mother today at some lengths. She is doing wonderful, considering the loss of her husband. They are hearty people, Clement. She also told me they were all right after that trip. She is holding up well, as is Raileanu with his father's passing, but busying himself with the renovation of the Vanwell prison, she said, and smiled proudly. Good. That is good to know. I am glad for all the three of you. Is everything packed, or should I arrange? He began. No, sir. I have everything packed, and it is loaded into 2 wagons, ready for us to depart, as soon as you give the word. She finished for him. Well, would you grace my wife and eldest son with a short visit before we retire for the night, so we may begin in the morning? Of course. I'm so happy to see them again. Let us. She stood and waited for her host to motion towards his spouse's location. The next morning they loaded into carriages, one for the governess and the 2 youngest children, and Clement's son rode with them. 2 carriages of his personal soldiers and equipment, and 2 with the cargo and luggage at the rear. 3 men in Clement's personal service rode their own horses, in front of the column first thing in the morning, but had moved around several times before midday, speaking with all of them at one time or another. It was nearly 200 miles from Lake Königssee to Vienna. They would take several days to reach their destination, even with the excellently maintained roads on their route. Displacing would be easiest for Monica, but he could not, and he was expected to travel ordinarily to visit each district governor in his position en route. This trip would be safe and relaxing, to be honest, for Monica, and give her the opportunity to enjoy the things that travel often overlooks, which are magical to people. The professor had spent his time since speaking with Arcturus scouring his books and papers, and trying to see if his new reports of chaos in relation to the mission and its hardships, even that strange stick-handled fly swatter, had any connections. So late into the night that he fell asleep, after finding nothing of note to reference, he finished by inscribing the stated facts in the special book. After acquiring the copy he had sent to Clement to show Raileanu to inscribe the events surrounding John Tellafrog's illness and now his passing, he had begun locking himself into the secure study room in his London home. It was on the 3rd floor, at the back with only 2 tiny windows which had been long painted shut and couldn't be opened from the outside, if they did budge at all. He had been warned of its rarity and importance, and took all of it, as well as the weight of this inquiry, very seriously. Even his housekeeper had no key to this room, but she was used to him locking himself in there for long periods over the years anyway. She had no reason to suspect that this instance was any different from previous scholarly work in which he had behaved this way. A single pot-belly stove had replaced the fireplace some years back, and its crooked stovepipe had never been cleaned. It would sweat and leak coal dust, leaving a mess on the floor, which his housekeeper constantly complained about. Sometimes the wind blowing across the rooftops, or perhaps children scaling the building and playing around on the roof, would cause it to wiggle, making it squeak and creak. He thought he began to hear that sound, and roused from his slumped position across the desk just a little. He fumbled, eyes half open, for his glasses on the desk. Then he did detect rain falling outside. Occasionally a gust would blow some drops against the tiny panes of glass and make a tink-tink sound. So he relented, overcome by sleepiness, in the search for his glasses. But then he heard the unmistakable sound of softly clad footsteps, and he shot back in his seat, flung his arms forward to the desk, and rummaged around for his glasses so he could see. It was a very tall figure by the small windows. The combined factors of barely waking, no glasses, and the glare of outside light behind it made it impossible for him to tell who it could be. When he got his spectacles properly mounted to his ears and nose, and he adjusted to the light, he was sure he had no idea who this was. They were at least 7 feet tall. They had pure white hair hanging down the sides of their face to mid-chest, with a hood on their floor-length overcoat. The clothing was all very dark gray, very soft in appearance, almost out of focus. "Who are you? How did you break into my home?" the professor demanded. "I am Cleet. You have inscribed some strange occurrences in the book, sir." The figure slowly approached the professor. Cleet then lowered his hood, letting his hair fall around his shoulders, and his face came into focus. He had very sharp features, flawless skin, electric blue eyes, not glowing but definitely self-luminescent, and tall, pointed ears. It was, without a doubt, a high elf. Sir, Cleet, you are you?" he tried to ask. "A high elf, yes, I am. As I said, I am here because of your writings in the book. It is curious to us, and anything that catches our attention is important. You must assist your companions to compel their efforts to collect information regarding Mr. Tellafrog's illness and record it for us." He stood perfectly still, penetrating the professor with the seriousness in his eyes. "You have a copy of the book?" the professor asked. "Of course. We created the books for our own purposes, and the magical world has corresponded with the events of the world and its complexities to us, and we have used the books for thousands of years. It is usually the only communication we concern ourselves with from what you call the mortal world. You are now one of 3 living persons who know we still exist. For the sake of yourselves and your friends, it must remain that way. Not even your friends may know of our meeting. I am here only to impress the importance of their search on you and the dire consequences of revealing our meeting. Nothing more." Cleet slowly bowed his head, and then was simply gone. No whoosh, no slight vacuum in the space we would dislocate from, were that a wizard or sorceress. No light, no distortion, nothing. The High Elves are, of course, in our magical histories, but in the last 300 or 400 years they have fallen from former fact into myth, even in our circles, he thought. Not 20 years prior, the great libraries in Europe, which held our magical history, had agreed to move the tomes regarding interactions with the High Elves to the same sections as those on Fae and other nature nymphs of legend. Many magical creatures are under our protection, and far too many go uncared for at all. Without research, I would wager it was over 2,000 years since any direct interaction with High Elves was recorded, and even that may be spurious. This was serious, and the professor decided to determine if anyone was available to discuss this new urgency. He straightened himself up and went to unlock the door and nearly knocked his housekeeper over to the ground floor where the portrait of the Tellafrogs was. No one was visible, so he went quickly to the 2 he had of Clement, and neither was occupied. What to do? Arteris did indeed arrive at the junction going to the Loggins' homestead and paused to inspect the area. The skies above were shrouded in wispy gray clouds that barely covered the sun from this place, making it hot and dreary even after such a cooling rain. No one was in sight, and the wind made the trees nearby fling water off the leaves now and again. There was no damage like he had observed at the Tellafrogs. That was good. It looked as though the heavy rain was fairly far off now, and didn't appear to be storming in the direction of the mission. He didn't see any lightning striking this side of the storm either. It was going somewhat north of his current route. He felt safe going on to the mission, keeping Cat on his shoulder, since no one was around. He was wrong, however. Someone was around. A single Comanche scout was in the trees to the north, and although it was a quarter-mile off, this lone observer could tell that a large bird of some sort was sitting on that lone man's shoulder. Then the Comanche witnessed the strange man vanish. This time he appeared right outside the front gate to the mission, with doors wide open, hanging from the hinges, which had been blown around in the storm. The latch must have broken off and was lying on the ground near the wall. He had a good look around in all directions, trying to see if anybody was nearby. When he had satisfied himself he was alone, he loosed Cat and started inside. Everything was still wet and dripping. Pans or buckets left outside had filled with rainwater. There was close to 4 inches of rain in that hour-long storm, and this time the trough outside the front gate was full. Inside the walls he didn't see much damage either, but it was obvious some strong winds had hurled things around. The dust of late summer that was here before had washed away, and aside from the blown-in debris like leaves, it in fact looked better than before. "Father Callius, are you here? It's Artyrus Metternich," he yelled, while looking around. At first there was no answer, but then he did perceive a muffled voice from behind the chapel. "Yes, down here." It was Father Callius. Artyrus went around the left side of the chapel and to the back, where there was a thick, well-built door to the right he hadn't seen before. Father Callius's quarters were to the left of this door, probably concealed earlier by a rack of barrels between the two. "Down here, my son." He could hear the father was behind this new door easily now. "The rain has swollen this door. It is a bit stuck. Could you help me? It opens out. You will have to grip the rod to pull it out, I'm afraid." "Yes, let me get a good grip on it." Artyrus grabbed the round wooden dowel of the latch, which was in the open position, and pulled as hard as he could. It creaked and scratched as it inched past the stone doorframe. Then, pop, it opened. Father Callius fell onto Artyrus as he was pushing from the inside. He helped the father up and steadied him. Thank you. I went down there when I saw the storm coming, somewhat needlessly, I fear. It didn't sound as bad as I had feared it might. Things look remarkably good around here, I must say," as he surveyed the area. "We tried ourselves to build a new door for that basement. We are not very good carpenters, I fear. It is obviously too tight. So what brings you back here, my son? Is everything all right at the Tellafrogs?" he asked as he kept trying to brush the dust off his black priest's robes. "There was a tornado at the Tellafrogs. We were concerned about you here alone, especially if it had come this way." "It was a violent storm, no doubt. Buckets of rain and wind, incessant lightning and thunder the whole time. But I don't believe I heard anything like a tornado here. Is everyone all right?" Yes, we are all fine," Artyrus assured him. "That is good. God is good. God is good." Father patted him on the shoulder. Then both of them heard the sound of horses approaching, and it sounded like quite a few. Artyrus called Cat with a whistle, peeking around the end of the chapel to try and determine who it might be. Looking out the open front gate, he could see a good 500 yards down the path he had come. "Are you expecting anyone, Father?" he asked nervously, putting his hand on the pistol. "No, but there may be some people coming to check on the mission also," Father posited, also straining to see. The angle of the late afternoon sun had slipped below the remaining wispy clouds, and it was bright again. With the benefit of rainfall, there was virtually no dust in the air of the setting sun. It was now clear that it was Indians, Comanches, at least 6 or 7, who could be heard now, their shrill cries echoing through the air. "Those are Comanche cries," Father Callius said, his voice trembling with fear. Their horses' hooves were stamping through the wet topsoil into the drier layer beneath, making dust as they galloped towards the mission. They were coming straight for the front gate as fast as they could ride. Artyrus took Cat on his arm, corralled Father Callias back to the doorway, and ushered him downstairs. He launched Cat downstairs as well, once the father had cleared the narrow stairwell, and followed them. He gently shut the door so it wouldn't make a loud sound and give away their position. From the back of the chapel they were concealed from view of the front gate. It was possible, as Artyrus knew from his time in the cavalry, to have escaped their view, riding that fast. "Father, it's Indians. The front gate is open, and the latch is broken and lying on the ground. I could not reach it in time anyway. I need a board or something I can wedge against the latch on this door so they cannot open it," he shouted down. He could tell Father Callias was rummaging around. Then he staggered up the stairs with a small chair, whose back was wide enough to put between the sliding latch and the wall. He had to kick it in place, but it worked. They both went to the small room below and tried to listen to what was happening. Artyrus took the Patterson revolver rifle off his shoulder and set it against the wall. The lamp the father had been using before was still lit, illuminating the little room. "I need to send word to Raileanu that we are trapped here. Can you write a note I can send out with my owl?" he asked the father. "It's all my fault. All of this. I caused it all. I was just trying to help everyone." Father Callias began sobbing and fell into the chair at the desk, slumping over it. Artyrus went and grabbed him firmly by the shoulder and shook him. "Father, compose yourself. You must stay quiet or they will find us." He spotted the loose papers and pen. He grabbed a piece and wrote, "Mission under attack from Indians. We are trapped in the basement." He tore the small part off that he had written on, called Cat, and wrapped it around her leg. Looking around for some string, he couldn't find it, so he pulls his wand and points it at her leg. Now it's tied tightly with a cotton string. Father Callias sees this and says, "No, you cannot show them you're a wizard, my son. They will kill you. Magic may have caused all of this." Then he stopped and stared blankly at Artyrus, having let something slip he didn't want to. "None of that matters now, sir. We must survive this first." Artyrus was gathering the few preloaded cylinders for his pistol and rifle, as they were the same. He pulled another chair next to the wall by the stairs, set the 3 cylinders on it, ball side down, so the caps would have no chance of falling off. Now they can tell by the sounds that the fighters were inside the chapel above, banging, breaking, just destroying everything. They both froze, scanning the ceiling and tracking their movements as best they could. Artyrus looked at Father Callias, who had resorted to covering his mouth with his less swollen hand. He was so nervous that Artyrus could hear the nervous breath passing through his nostrils, making a faint whistle sound, but not loud enough to give them away. They listened intently, and when the Comanche went out the front of the chapel and towards the sheds at the front gate, Artyrus went up the stairs, with Cat on his right forearm. He whispered to her, "Cat, fly over the top of the building right away, and then go to Raileanu as fast as you can." He approached the door and moved the chair away as quietly as he could. He listened intently one more time, and the intruders were not audible anywhere close. Maybe they were even gone. Artyrus pulled his pistol with his right hand, cocked the hammer, and slid the latch to the open position. Then he remembered how he had jammed it shut. Maybe he could do it slowly. He tried. No, it would take swift and decisive action to get it unstuck. He would have to open it as fast as possible, let Cat out, and pull it shut again, so he holstered the pistol. Then he heard someone speaking, but couldn't understand it, of course. He pulled his wand out, slid it up his right sleeve, and put the tip behind his right ear. Now, thanks to magic, he could understand them speaking. "I know that priest is here. He is hiding somewhere. We must keep looking. He is working with sorcerers, and they are the ones who sent the storm among our people today. I caught sight of one in alliance with an owl. They have owl magic. None of us are untouched by the devastation today. This evil comes from here. Stay quiet and keep looking." They spoke amongst themselves in low, calm voices, but then Artyrus heard them walk back into the chapel, located above the basement. However, the path to this door was far enough away that he felt he could open it, let Cat out, and shut it before they could reach him. He took a deep breath, exhaled, and looked at Father Callias, who was holding his hands clasped together over his mouth and was very nervous. He put his wand between his teeth. Grasping the peg handle with his right hand, he stepped back and hit the door as hard as he could with his shoulder. The door did spring open. Cat immediately left his arm, but the force of opening was such that Artyrus's foot caught on the threshold as his body weight went over the center of his boots, and he fell forward onto the muddy ground. His wand flung out of his mouth, probably 4 feet away from him. He looked up and around, and there were 4 fighters to his left near the front of the chapel, 50 feet away. Then he looked straight ahead, and there was one on top of the surrounding wall who spotted him instantly and drew his bow instinctively fast, and held it as Artyrus scrambled back towards the doorway. The door had flung all the way flat against the wall, so reaching the opening, he reached for the latch peg handle now 3 feet from the doorway, when he was hit with what felt like a white-hot poker having punched through his back, below the ribs on the right side. He spun around, trying to essentially fall back with his body weight to slam the door shut again. Another arrow slapped his right arm off the latch, so it didn't slam, but it did close. His arm was pinned to the door now, and he reflexively tried to pull it free, but it just broke the shaft off, leaving the arrowhead in the door, and he realized now the arrow had missed any serious blood vessels somehow, but his arm bone was cracked, if not broken. It was excruciating, already swelling and stretching at the adrenaline-filled skin. Artyrus was sitting now, couldn't lean against the wall because of the one in his back, and one had pierced between the bones of his right arm. So he reached up with his foot, pushed the latch shut, and pushed the chair in its spot to hold it as best as he could. "Father, please, come help me to get down there," he shouted. No sense in being quiet now. He could hear them talking and shouting at the door, but had no way to know what they were saying, as he had lost his wand outside. Father Callias was still crying, still near crippled from the beating he had taken from before our first visit, made his way up the stairs and helped Artyrus to stand and go back down the stairs. They collapsed into a pile at the bottom of the stairs on each other, Artyrus's back slapping the wall and breaking the arrow's feathered end off and pressing it further out the front of his abdomen. Blood was running down his front and back, pooling around his waist and down to the ground in large volumes now. He was feeling quite faint now. "Father, please try to pull this one out of my arm. Tie it tight with the cloth. I will try and keep them away from us by firing up the stairway. If you can help me use a chair to rest my rifle on. Please," Artyrus labored out. Father Callias was still weeping, crying, saying that it was all his fault. He took his handkerchief out and went to Artyrus. He shakily grabbed the long feathered end of the arrow shaft and went to pulling on it, twisting back and forth. Artyrus let out a loud cry, and as the broken end passed through the hole in his arm, he passed out for a few seconds. By the time he had come around, the arm was tied up. His head flopped around in a circle for a moment. He saw the arm and watched the father trying to dab at the arrow in his stomach, sobbing. "Stop, father. That one must stay. If I take that out, I will be dead much sooner, but I am going to die today." Artyrus also knew that with these injuries, there was no way he could dislocate. Even if he could, who would help? Raileanu cannot dislocate at all. There was no one to get help from. "Go, and say whatever prayers you need to for a dying man. But in the process, bring me that chair and put me at the bottom of the stairs." The fighters above were hitting the door with something. Maybe the splitting axe the priests used for firewood. It was hard to tell. They stopped striking the door for a moment, as Father Callias and Artyrus got the chair and rifle set up in their path, in the narrow opening at the bottom of the stairs. Artyrus heard the unmistakable sound of his wand being broken, and then their talking turned to whoops and war cries. "Father Callius, move away from this stairway, and say prayers for yourself as well. They found my wand. I dropped it when I got hit, and I am pretty sure they are blaming me for the tornado hitting their homes, based on what I heard earlier. They will surely kill us both." He pulled the pistol out of the holster and laid it on the chair seat, motioning for the father to hand him the rifle, which he also laid on the chair seat, barreled through the bars on its back, and then dug the extra bags of ball and powder out of his trail coat's pockets and set them on the ground by the chair. Looking around the room, he really wished he could move one of those big wardrobes over here in front of the entrance to this room. Neither of them could budge those things in the shape they were in. Oh well. "This is not your fault, my son. It is my fault. I did all of this. I will make my confession to you so that someone can know what happened here that led to all this." He was still suffering from his bout of crying, but was speaking more clearly. "Father, telling me would be fine if we had time, but that will not help anyone going forward. You must write and hide, or secure somewhere, the facts of what has happened here. Raileanu or the Rangers will find it and know what to do. But we don't have time." Artyrus was certain that even just blood loss was going to be a problem very soon. "I will tell you as I write. You are correct," Father Callius agreed. The crashing at the door upstairs was intensifying, and Artyrus was happy they were trying to push in as the door opened out. He heard a loud crack. The best he could figure was that it came from the peg handle on the outside of the door. They were screaming and chopping at it with their tomahawks. He was hoping he could last long enough to get shots off before he passed out. He was honestly unable to concentrate on the father's words and stay focused on the job. He was really wondering if he would have consciousness when they broke through the door. Artyrus really didn't know which would give out first, the door or him. Father Callius was writing and talking, but the throbbing that started in his gut had gone cold now. The arm was swelling, still leaking, but not badly, but was throbbing badly, and the skin was burning from the tearing action of removing the arrow and it stretching under the force of swelling. So he concentrated and forced himself to watch the door. A small corner of the plank on the latch side at the top was being broken off, and then the hole then became large enough so one of them decided to reach in with their whole forearm. Artyrus let a rifle round go into the side of that fighter, who was knocked clear to the ground. He tried to cock the hammer again, which was really difficult, as his arm was starting to straighten out from the swelling, so he couldn't bend it very well. Their furious cries heightened, and the chopping continued. They worked on the third plank from the left, at the top, with the axes now. Knowing his time was limited to be effective at all, Artyrus decided to fire any time he thought shadows indicated a person may be near. He kept adjusting to be effective. After a few more shots, his finger was swollen so much that he had to force it into the trigger guard. A couple more shots, and he couldn't get anything more than his fingertip into the trigger. The board they were chopping was not as large a hole as the first, but he saw a hand come through and decided to take a shot. He missed. It was to the right against the wall, but even that sliding ricochet seemed to hit that person, and the hand disappeared, matched with screams of pain. Artyrus noticed now that the throbbing was in his eyes, and it made it hard to hold his head still. Another hand came through, and he worked the trigger, only to hear a click. The rifle was out. He laid it on the chair and picked up the pistol with his unswollen left hand. By the time he switched firearms and looked back up, they had run a rope between the two holes around the full-height board between the broken ones. Oh, they had figured out the door opens out. They were presumably going to pull it open with a horse. "Father, they will have the door open in a minute." Artyrus fired 2 quick shots, trying to hit the rope, fruitlessly. "Hide that letter right now. Right now!" He heard the horse being brought to the left side of the door, and he figured he wouldn't get a shot at the horse. Artyrus heard the father scrambling around behind him to his left, stretched out on the floor, pushing something under the cockeyed large wardrobe, and then crawling on his hands and knees over to the wall by Artyrus. "I put it all in the letter, and wrapped it in deerskin, and put that inside a rawhide map case. It should survive whatever they do to us," Father Callias said. "Thank you for hearing everything, and I am sorry for what I have done. I thought I was doing good." "It's all right, Father. God gives us forgiveness if we beg in humility in Jesus' name." Artyrus had no idea what he was talking about. He fired twice more at the rope on the door. With a slow, ripping, cracking sound, the latch gave way, and the door flew open. The screaming and war cries were from maybe a dozen men, more than he had thought were there. As this last minute approached, Artyrus's vision was coming and going with each heartbeat. He decided to fire as soon as he heard footsteps, which came a moment later. One shot, 2 shots, click, and a tomahawk crashed into his forehead. Father Callias was grabbed, and they cut his throat and threw him down, pointlessly hitting him in the back with their tomahawks as well. Well, that wasn't good for Artyrus or Father Callias. It did not go well. It did not go very well at all. I was in Aberdeen. Let's see, what was it? I was July and August in Missouri. So September, October, November, December of 97 in Aberdeen Proving Grounds. And then I traveled away and went to Hawaii. What a horrible place to be, right? All right, so we have made it through chapters 9 and 10 tonight, everybody. We saw an unfortunate end to Artyrus and Father Callias. Well, we're pretty sure Artyrus is probably gone. He took a tomahawk to the head. But I suppose it could have been the back end, and maybe he's unconscious, and we'll find him later. We'll have to continue to read to find out. No spoilers from the author. But Father Callias had his throat slit and then his back beaten in by tomahawks. Pretty sure he probably didn't make it. No spoilers by the author. Yeah, I kind of figured that was probably the case. So, I hope you guys enjoyed chapters 9 and 10 of Tellafrog. On Saturday, we will move in for at least 11 and 12, maybe 13. We'll see how they are running through. I try to keep these to about an hour and a half so that way I can give my best performances, especially because I don't stop to drink during them except at chapter breaks and things like that. So, if you guys missed our reading tonight or any of the readings all along, they are available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, or on the Rumble channel. Just search Tellafrog. I'm sure you're going to find it. I will have these chapters up a little bit later this evening. Thank you, Torin MacRath. I appreciate you. Appreciate your letting me tell this story. Thank you all. Again, I will be back Thursday for some Mech Warrior Online, and then Saturday I will be back for more reading of Tellafrog. I hope you guys will come along and join. If you have anybody that you think might be interested in hearing more about this story, reading it, listening to it, anything else, please feel free to share the playlists with them or the videos. Let them come check it out. Remember, one of the nice things about these recorded videos on YouTube, if I'm reading too fast for you, you can slow it down. If I'm reading too slow for you, you can speed it up. I want to say up to 2 times as fast. You're pretty good if you can listen to me at 2 times as fast. But, hey, we'll take it. Like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like, comment on the videos. That helps to the algorithm to see that people are watching them and can get them out to more people. Because this story deserves to be heard by more than are here on my live streams. Once again, thank you so much for coming along to spend some time with me this evening. I look forward to seeing you guys all again really soon. Have a great week ahead, and good night.